And then as part of this recording, we just wanted to let you know that we will be recording the audio, the visual, the participants, and other information. And so if you prefer not to have your face included within that, then you're welcome to turn off your cameras. But we will be recording this and we share it back with our community, because we know some people may not be able to join live and often go back and access those recordings. So with that, I think next up we have our actual starting slide. And this is just a pleasure. Kiki is an amazing, amazing educator. She is serving with us this year as one of our community ambassadors, and she will be your hostess for this evening and this webinar. So I'm going to slip back into the background. I'll be here if there's any tech support that's needed. But with that, I'm going to turn it away to you, Kiki. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We are very excited to talk about augmented reality and virtual reality. I think it's such kind of a magical sort of thing that we can put into the hands of our students. And it's just so exciting, the possibilities that are out there. So I just want to begin by sharing a little bit about myself. I am honored to be serving this year as one of the CS for All Teachers community ambassadors, where I get to interact with folks like you on the discussion boards and sharing resources and interacting with you on the Twitter chats. Currently a middle school computer science teacher at an all-girls school in Connecticut. I love my job because I feel like I wish I had this kind of stuff around when I was growing up. So I just love bringing that passion for tech and for learning all kinds of things tech to my students. Mom of two amazing children, one feisty dog who, you know, is away right now with grandma, so she doesn't disturb this webinar. And again, I'm just very excited to be here and to sort of hear your experiences with VR and AR, and just to learn from you and to hopefully teach you a few things this evening. I'm also very, very excited to have Robert Kalman joining us this evening. Robert is a middle school digital design teacher and tech coordinator in New Jersey. He's sort of kind of a guru, I think, in the world of AR and VR, and I'm very, very excited to hear sort of what he has to share with us this evening, and to hear a little bit about his experiences using some of the tools that he uses with his students. So Robert, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that.
Thanks, Kiki. Thanks for inviting me to join you tonight. I'll just say that, you know, I love these types of tools like you were saying, and it's always great to, you know, connect with like-minded educators and, you know, get the conversation going and can continue the conversation. So thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Yeah, so happy to have you this evening. All right, so we are just going to jump right in. Before we sort of get into the content, we would just love to hear sort of from all of you. So Melissa, if you can pull up that poll for us, you know, what is your experience using any of these sort of, any tools in your classroom, augmented, virtual reality? Are you a pro? You have some expertise in one of these technologies, you've learned a little bit about it, want to learn more, or it's all completely new? So I'll give you just a minute or two to think about that. Okay, so it looks like so far we're all meeting in the middle, which is great. So we have 3. Okay. Okay, great. So we are sort of all in the same place, which is great. That you've all maybe dabbled a little bit, but would love to learn more and sort of learn what the possibilities and where you can go further. Great. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that with us this evening. Okay. So for tonight's agenda, I just want to quickly talk about sort of what are immersive technologies, talk about the why and the how they can be used in the classroom. And then we're going to dive into 2 tools in particular. We're going to talk about co-spaces as a VR and AR creation tool. And also we're going to learn a little bit and have some hands-on experience using, or hands-on practice, I should say, using A-Frame. So those are sort of our overall goals for this evening. We'll also share some resources for you to take your learning further. There's so much to learn within this field. And of course, we'll open it up for question and answers. And if you have any questions along the way as we're presenting, please feel free to type them in the chat and we'll sort of get to them along the way as well. Okay. So just very quickly, immersive, I like to start off with a definition of sort of what these technologies are. So it's really kind of any tech that's combining our this digital computerized world that we're creating with our actual physical world. As we know, these technologies are becoming ever more ubiquitous as we go about our daily lives. You know, there's any number of filters we can put on our Snapchats, on our Instagram, even on Zoom. You know, you can apply some virtual AR filters that can add a fun accessory to you. So they're really becoming more and more just part of our daily lives and things that we interact with, you know, constantly. The two sort of main subsets when you think about immersive technology are augmented reality, which again is just kind of this applying a layer of a digital layer upon the physical world, and then virtual reality, which is more sort of a really immersive experience. So I want to start off by playing just this quick 2-minute video. This video was found on the website AR, VR, and EDU. Some of you may be familiar with it. It is a website hosted by Jamie Donnelly, who's sort of a big, she's an educator and a speaker who does a lot with these immersive technologies in the classroom. And I just always think it's a fun kind of video to show in terms of showcasing the power and sort of the practical uses of why we would use these technologies in school. Okay, so I like showing that video again because it sort of showcases a lot of the really practical and powerful uses of VR and AR in the classroom. It is a very highly engaging kind of medium to use with students, definitely for sure piques student interest. As I mentioned before, you know, it's becoming more and more really a big part of our digital culture to interact in this way. It can provide some really real authentic learning experiences and transport us outside of kind of the walls of our classroom, and has been shown to increase kind of learning and retention of content in various content areas and disciplines. And that's all wonderful and great, and we appreciate VR and AR for all that it can do for us in that sense. But what actually is even more exciting for me is turning that focus on, having our students, empowering our students to be the creators of this content versus just sort of consuming and interacting with it. And that's really going to be what our focus is this evening, is, sharing some tools that can empower your students to bring their imaginations to life, to create, to be creators of these worlds, to see how code can be used to create these experiences in really, a very sort of quick and easy ways. And lastly, when we're asking our students to focus on creating in digital worlds, they're really tapping into these spatial reasoning skills that are extremely important when you span across any STEM field, any STEM discipline. Understanding how to sort of orient in a 3D world, design in a 3D world. These are skills that are becoming ever more important as our students go through their education. So with all that being said, we are going to start with sort of taking a look at our first creation tool, and that is CoSpaces EDU. And I'm actually going to pass it over to Robert, who will share a little bit about CoSpaces.
Thanks, Kiki. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, just picking up where Kiki left off. Thanks again for having me tonight to share with you a little bit about the AR and VR creation platform, CoSpaces. I really appreciate the lead-in you gave me, Kiki, because that's really the crux of it, that yes, many of our students have these technologies available to them, but maybe they're not always creators of the content. Maybe they're only consuming in a lot of the platforms. So a lot of students are familiar with AR and VR, but they don't really have a full understanding of what it is and how broad the field is, I would say, because they haven't yet had the opportunity to create. And so I would say that CoSpaces is the most accessible platform where students as young as elementary school can begin to dabble with AR and VR creation. So I had an intro earlier, so thanks again for having me. I have a few video samples built into the presentation, so we'll take a look at a couple of those, and then I'll actually do a very brief live demo. The whole webinar is only 1 hour, and we're already, I think, like 16 minutes into it. So this is definitely only a little intro to CoSpaces, but as with a lot of the presentations I do, if I just pique your curiosity a little bit more and sort of inspire you to log on to CoSpaces, maybe sign up for a free trial or sign up for a free account, maybe it'll be helpful. So in CoSpaces, students can log in using any type of device. On all mobile devices, there is an app version. There's also the web version, which I'll show you in a little bit. And students can create both virtual reality or augmented reality experiences, and there's many different features. I would kind of describe it almost as like an AR VR version of Scratch, which many computer science teachers are familiar with. So yeah, here's a sample of a merge cube project, and I'll show you the merge cube in a second. All right, so just a couple of things to point out here. I'll just sort of zoom back in the video. So this is a a digital experience that's been created on a Chromebook. It uses a 3D model, the truck. It uses a digital version of the Merge Cube, which again, I'm going to hop onto the Merge website in just a second. And there's also an uploaded video from WeVideo, and then using an iPad in this case, but any AR activated mobile device. So any modern phone or tablet can view or can use CoSpaces and the Merge Cube. I know that even like Amazon Fire tablets, it will work with. So that's kind of cool. These are the Merge Cubes. Merge is very much focused in education right now. They have a bunch of stuff that's consumption based. But it's really a holographic foam cube. I call it an AR stress toy. And CoSpaces and many other applications, either developed by Merge, the Merge VR company, and by other organizations. They're all over the app stores, and yeah. So when CoSpaces brought the Merge Cube in, that was pretty exciting. Let's keep going here. Here is a VR sample of a roller coaster that a student coded, and I'll show you the code, or a brief demo of the code in just a couple of minutes. This might be a little dizzying. Right, so that's obviously an example of a virtual reality project, and then it was shared, and it can be viewed, say, on a phone, or even in like the Oculus Quest browser. So in a mobile or VR device, in the browser or the app. And here's just one more AR sample focused on cyberbullying. All right, I'm going to pause that there. Okay, so how did these tools come to be? Or sorry, how did these projects come to be? Excuse me. So I want to make sure to be transparent about CoSpaces and how the business operates. I am currently a CoSpaces ambassador, so that they run with a freemium model. So there is a paywall. There is a free version of CoSpaces that any teacher can sign up for and get 30 free accounts, but there are limitations to it. So right now I'm inside a student pro account. I would definitely say that just the free version has a lot of value on its own, but there are other things like using the Merge Cube, more advanced coding, the ability to upload as many different assets as you want. Those are limitations, or those are restricted unless you have a paid account. Yeah, which you can also do a free trial of the pro version. So here's just a very basic sample of a CoSpaces virtual reality project. So one of the templates that they give you is this gallery. We've slightly modified the gallery. We have a camera here. This is kind of like the student is the director of the scene and has the ability to zoom in. We've added a couple of objects, right? So we're able to search for images here. So we have an Australian flag. We have the continent of Australia. And I just wanted to show you briefly about how the coding works. So if I double click on a model or an object, right, as opposed to a platform like Scratch where you can just code anything that you want, objects need to be activated for coding. So I would double click on the flag of Australia. I would say I want it to be codable. Then I go over to the code tab. I would add a code blocks. So that's like their Blockly coding. And now I can add something like, I can add interactivity to my virtual or augmented reality space. So I can say when the flag of Australia is clicked, in this case, it's going to play a sound that I've uploaded. So like the Australian national anthem. So now I could go to actions. I can either search or just look for the sound. And I'm going to say when the flag of Australia is clicked, it's going to play the Australian national anthem. Now I test it. So I can't really test it until I press the play button in the top right. So as you can see, I'm outside of the gallery. And I'm able to walk. When I hover over with my mouse, I can sort of see that this is coded in addition to this one. Let's see if it works.
Australians all land.
All right, so that's just a very brief overview of CoSpaces. Other things I just wanted to show you is that they have these pre-built environments for you to choose from. You can also put in 360 images, but generally this is not the platform that I use for that with students. Students have the ability to upload videos. So say a student designed a video in a platform like WeVideo or iMovie, something like that. They could actually put their video into augmented or virtual reality. Currently, you can search for models in Google Poly directly through here. Some of you may know that Google Poly is shutting down, so that's unfortunate. Hopefully, they'll change the integration as Poly shuts down. There is a Bing-powered image, GIF search engine directly in there. And then there's a full library of people, animals, housing, different items that students can bring in. Also this is just like one scene, and honestly, most students only stick to the one scene world, but you can have multiple scenes. All right,
Robert,
and I'll just,
since you have, before you move on, I wanted to ask a question in the chat that I don't think has been addressed yet.
Sure.
Correct me if I missed it. A question from David about, are there any project successes integrating the Merge EDU platform?
honestly,
David, feel free to, I was going to say, David, feel free to chime in if there's anything additional you want to add.
Yeah,
I was going to say that some fabulous tools. You know, I've used a lot of these in my classroom, middle school students as well. And I think Merge EDU, their platform, they introduced a few different core curriculum-based projects on the app. And I had some time to use them in my classroom, my middle school students, and I'm just trying to see if anyone had.
I honestly haven't, but as far as I know, most of Merge EDU is consumption based. Like students would be able to like experiment with, you know, something for a science class or a social studies class. And as Kiki mentioned before, we're really focusing on student creation. So I definitely know that there's, you know, Merge's platform in addition to other apps that use the Merge Cube are fantastic, especially for giving students the opportunity to, you know, experiment hands-on with different content areas.
Thank you.
Sure. So that kind of wraps up my my portion of CoSpaces. Thanks again for giving me the opportunity. I'll be here through the end of the webinar if anyone had additional comments, questions. But thanks again for having me, Kiki.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I've used CoSpaces also with my kiddos, and it's always a hit. And it's pretty amazing the things that they can create, you know, with CoSpaces in terms of VR and AR. So thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so we are going to jump into our next tool. So let me just advance a little bit here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a tool that I really, you know, have come across just recently, you know, in recent year, maybe year or two, that I just am fascinated with for VR creation, and that is A-Frame. A-Frame, I'm going to show you just some quick examples of sort of what you can create with A-Frame. We're going to talk a little bit about how it works, and then I actually was hoping to give you some hands-on experience, practice using it. So we'll see how that goes. But just if everyone can give me maybe like a thumbs up emoji reaction. Has anyone used, give me a thumbs up, please give me a thumbs up if you've used A-Frame at all. Like tinkered with it or heard of it? Yes, no, thumbs up.
Got a no from Jennifer and a no from April.
Okay.
Thumbs up from Robert.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for sharing your experiences. Okay, so A-Frame I love because number one, it's based on HTML, and HTML is the language, is the markup language that, you know, allows us to view web pages. So really you can create fairly quickly with just sort of a few lines of code, really. And if you have some familiarity with HTML, the process is pretty comprehensible for even middle school kids. I've done some A-Frame with some 6th graders who have studied HTML, so are familiar with a little bit about the structure of HTML and who can sort of create some basic scenes in A-Frame without, you know, too much guidance or assistance. The other reason that I love A-Frame is that because it's a totally free, I mean, it's just a scripting language. So as long as you have a text editor or any tool that you like to use to create web pages, you can just be off and running. So I just was very excited to share this with you all and just to show you a little bit tonight about sort of what we can do. So before we get any further, I just want to share with you. So again, it is a language, a scripting language that runs on top, that runs in WebVR, which is viewable through any web browser, through any modern web browser. So you can do things, you can go into VR mode here, where you can upload 360 images and sort of look around and view a world that way. You can do things where you're creating these kind of figures and models and putting them into a VR scene. And right now, all I'm doing is I'm accessing a web page, so just one URL, and I'm entering the VR mode, and it's allowed me to view it in this way. You can do things where, you know, you can for sure add lots of interactivity. This is kind of a cool example where if you notice this black little circle here, that's your cursor. You can drop blocks similar to like a Minecraft sort of feeling, where you can create experiences similar to this, where you're interacting in a VR world and can actually create in a VR world that way. You can do things of this nature where this is, you know, solar system kind of model of a solar system. So you have planet objects here that are rotating, that are orbiting, again, and viewable all through a web browser. And, you know, also viewable through any sort of VR headset. So you could use a Google Cardboard headset with a mobile phone or a mobile device to view these experiences. You can use an Oculus, you can use kind of any other VR enabled device to also view these experiences. And then the last one, let's see, do things like this where it's sort of like a whimsical little world. Students can create this, sort of reminds me of a gallery where, you know, you can, there's sort of some random objects in here, but you could use it as sort of a virtual art gallery where you're placing objects or even images into this scene and having, you know, viewers go through and interact with it in that way. And then the last one, here's another quick example that I wanted to share. This one's a little bit more sophisticated, but it's a 3D model that has some more animation in it. You'll see there's kind of a realistic backdrop, and there's more of like a computer generated VR component in the middle. So there's lots you can do with A-Frame. And so what I wanted to start with is just really with the basics and the building blocks. And like I said earlier, is to give you some hands-on experience tinkering with the code. So here we go. Just to backtrack for 1 second and reiterate a little bit of what I said. A-Frame is a web framework for building these experiences. It runs a JavaScript library for the graphics. It's based on HTML. So if you have, you know, a basic understanding, or if your students have a basic understanding, it's for sure approachable. And it uses the structure of HTML to create these 3D elements in a virtual world. Okay. So another quick reaction from the audience here. Please give me some reaction, whether it's an emoji, something, if you are familiar with HTML. We have 1 thumb, 2 thumbs up. Oh yes, lots of thumbs ups. Thumbs ups, that sounded weird. Okay, lots of thumbs up. Okay, great. All right, so if you're familiar with HTML, that you know that really one of the basic things to understand is that HTML relies on what are called tags. So all the elements of things that you see on a web page are enclosed in between tags. So this slide that I have here, we have an opening tag, excuse me, that's the B, and the closing tag, which is the /B. And if anybody's feeling brave, you want to pop in the chat, what does that B tag mean, or what does that do to an element on a web page? What does the B tag mean? Does anybody know? So if you were writing HTML and you had some words that were in between 2 B tags, what does it do to those words? Bold, yes, Chris gets it. It bolds the words in between. So the tags just sort of dictate what happens to the elements that are surrounded by the tags. Okay, so here is what we're going to do first. I'm going to share in the chat right now a link to a VR, an A-Frame built VR website, WebVR website. And what I want you to do is I want you to, just so you can orient yourself in the space, is use the WASD keys and your mouse to sort of look around the world, navigate, walk through the world. And it's sort of like a little scavenger hunt. So there's some little things hidden in this world. I want you to search, see what you can find in this world. There's not too many. As you find them, if you feel like sharing them in the chat, that would be great. Otherwise, you can just sort of have fun looking for some things. I'll give you just about a minute to do so. There's not very many. So if you bear with me for 1 second. And we will be off. Okay. I'm sharing in the chat right now. So if you can go ahead and get to that chat, click on that link. It should open up a web VR world that you can navigate through with your WASD keys and your mouse. I'll give you about 1 minute to poke around and see what you can find. Did anybody find anything yet? Look up, look down, move forward.
I found a lake and some trees.
Oh, yay. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, we'll do 30 more seconds. Ooh, carousel and balloons. Yay, yay, you found my carousel and my balloons that I loved putting in there. And I apologize if the world is coming across very yellow on your browser. I was having some issues with that, but hopefully it's not too jarring on your eyes. Okay. Did anybody find the flowers poking in and out of the ground? The growing little field of flowers? Okay. Okay, so that was sort of a quick world that I did make with A-Frame. Again, the purpose of sharing that with you just now is to give you a little bit of experience, sort of navigate and looking around and knowing how to move through the world. What I want to do now is I want to share sort of the kind of hello world version of VR on A-Frame. Okay, so we know when we usually a programmer's first program is the Hello World program where they print Hello World on the screen. Well, in A-Frame VR, it's usually creating a scene that looks like this. Okay, reconnecting, let that load. It's a scene that includes a sphere, a box, a cylinder, and a plane. Here we go. There we go. So that's our Hello World version of AR, or A-Frame, excuse me, VR. So really the basic building blocks of A-Frame are these primitives. And as I mentioned before, you have sort of the sphere, the box, the cylinder, and the plane are probably the most basic shapes that you can begin when you start building your world. When you're including these in your A-Frame code, which I'll show you in just a minute, you're going to notice that they're surrounded by kind of well-named tags. So you have the sphere tag, the cylinder tag, the plane tag, and the box tag. So if I were to look at my code, this is actually the code that's generating my hello world. You'll see that each one of these elements kind of is enclosed in its own tags. Okay, so our box, our sphere, our cylinder, our plane are placed all right here, right within our scene, okay? Each primitive, so each element that is on in your code that's placed in your scene, really the location of that element is determined by the kind of the XYZ coordinate system. And in A-Frame, you know, our X axis is left to right, our Y is up and down, and our Z is, you know, back the depth, right? The back to the front. So if I were to look at my code, I'll notice that my box's position is at a -1 X axis, a 0.5 Y, and a -3 Z. Okay, and you can sort of take a look at where the sphere and the cylinder and the plane are positioned. That's what these three numbers are representative of. In addition to sort of where they're placed based on their position, there are lots of other attributes that you can apply to these primitives. The size is one. In this case, in this example, the sphere has a radius of 1.25 units. So you can determine the size of any of your primitives, of any of your shapes, or any of your elements on your screen, and then also the color. And here it's just showing the hexadecimal code for color. And then the last sort of piece here just is telling the the web page to display a shadow underneath it. So again, if I were to look at this code here, that's what's sort of generating this scene, this hello world scene here. Okay, so one thing I just want to point out, these primitives, right now they're just solid colors. There's lots of things that you can do. Again, these are sort of the basic building blocks. You can apply different textures to them by importing kind of images and placing them and using them as an image texture. So if you wanted some boulders, you can find, you know, a picture of sort of a rock texture and apply that to maybe the cube and play with the cube size to sort of make it look a little bit more like a rock. And the same thing for any of these shapes. Okay, so what I want to do now is kind of interactive practice number 2. So I wanted to give you kind of access to this code and see, I wanted you to get in there and just try trying some of these challenges. So changing the color of any of the shapes, changing the size of the sphere or of any of the shapes really, changing the color of the sky, changing the rotation of the plane, maybe adding more shapes, adding another box beyond the first box. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share again in the chat one more link that I'm going to ask you to go to. When you click on that link, it will take you to the website called Glitch. So Glitch is what my preferred coding platform when I'm making web pages. It's just, you know, a tool for making web pages. I like it because it has a great community on Glitch. There's lots of projects that are shared. And it also hosts the website for you. So if you or your students are creating these VR experiences, it's nice because once they create them, the link is already made. And if you want to view their worlds, all you have to do is access their links. So it's a pretty nice tool to use. Okay, so when you're in, let me share right now. When you access this world, just pulling up. I'm going to share the code. It's going to ask you to remix it in order to make changes to it. You do not need to sign in or register with Glitch in order to remix it. You can just remix the web page and start tinkering around with it. I think it saves it maybe for 2 days. It's a short length of time that it saves it. And if you wanted to sort of keep your work after what you complete tonight, you can certainly make an account on Glitch and save it that way so that you have it, so that it doesn't go away. But I just dropped that link in the chat. So if you want to take a minute, let's take about 2-3 minutes. Access that link, remix the web page and see, I'll put the challenges back up. If you can maybe try tackling some of these challenges. Okay, any questions so far? And if someone can drop me a thumbs up if you're able to access that link successfully and get to the code, that would be wonderful. Oh, yay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Great. So we'll do about a few minutes, maybe 2-3 minutes of a little tinkering. Or the one thing that I forgot to mention is that if you want to see the results, so as you're coding, the other reason I like Glitch is that you can actually see sort of the output of your code in a new window just by clicking the show button, or you can view it right next to your code. And it's nice because you can see instant changes as you make them to your code, which is super helpful. And if anybody feels brave and wants to share in the chat or just by unmuting, if you've done something that you're super proud of right now that you changed or you added, I would love to hear that. Okay, let's do about 1 more minute of some tinkering. And again, please feel free to unmute and ask questions if you have any, or type away in the chat. Okay, I think we're going to move on unless there's any last minute questions. If anybody feels like sharing something that they may have accomplished. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to share just some resources that I found to be very, very helpful and really, really well done. If you're interested in learning more about A-Frame, again, as Robert said before, we don't have too much time to cover everything in this webinar, but there's so many resources out there, and you know, would love to share those with you if you are interested in pursuing this any further. So A-Frame has an official sort of website where they share a lot of kind of code samples and examples, and it's just a really good reference if you or your students are using A-Frame. I don't know if many of you are familiar with Code.hs, but they also have a course. They have an hour of code actually course on A-Frame. That's, short, bite-sized course on beginning A-Frame. That's free. That's also very worthwhile and a great course to check out. In addition to the hour of code version, they also have a full A-Frame course to take your learning a little further. There's Frame Academy, which I'm just going to show you, is another excellent resource. And I just love the way that this is laid out because you can sort of toggle through the menu. Let's see, it's a little pokey right now. And there's video tutorials, there's little challenges embedded in, so that sort of take you through step by step on creating with A-Frame. And then lastly, Glitch, again, which is just a tool, web tool that I love to use for creating and hosting these websites. Also has some really good tutorials and examples embedded. So you can poke around there and learn also right on Glitch, some really, really great examples there. Okay. And then lastly, really just, when we were talking about AR and VR, there's so many resources and tools that are out there as you and your students are creating some of these experiences. I mentioned earlier about in terms of viewing kind of your experiences. If you're working with AR, even co-spaces, all those VR worlds are viewable just using a web browser. But if you want to take it further, Google Cardboard is an inexpensive kind of tool to use for viewing VR. If your school district has the money to purchase some Oculus headsets or other headsets, those are also, tools that are great that you can use to have your students create their experiences and then share them. Also Tinkercad, which you may be familiar with, is a 3D modeling tool. It's a website where your students can log in and create 3D models that you can then import into, I think you can also import them into CoSpaces, but I know into A-Frame as well. And then I also included a link here to the blog I referenced earlier, Jamie Donnelly's blog, where she has lots of tools, not only just creation, but just kind of other cool AR, VR tools that you can use in your classroom for teaching. And then lastly, another resource that I like to use when I'm doing things with my students with 360-degree images, if I'm trying to make kind of life realistic kind of VR experiences. Flickr has kind of a whole group, a Flickr group that has all 360 images that are importable and that work well in these tools for creating VR, 360 VR immersive experiences. Okay, so we have about 6 minutes left, not bad, okay. I would love to open it up. We would love to open it up to questions, comments. I see we have some things in the chat. Tinkercad, yes, April, I agree. Tinkercad is so useful on so many levels, and they just keep adding more features. So if you don't know Tinkercad, definitely check it out. And ThingLink, yes, that is also another great tool. Thank you, Jennifer. I haven't used that as much, but yes, I've heard its praises being sung. So thank you. Thank you, David. Yes, ARVR in EDU chat. There is a Twitter chat that happens every Wednesday at 8. Tons of great tools and resources that are always shared on that Twitter chat. So for sure, check that out. Yeah. Any other questions? Robert, do you have anything else to add? Not to put you on the spot.
I would just say that just because you're talking about different tools, with my classes, I've begun transitioning away from Google Tour Creator, and we've started using Google Earth projects. You can't really view the projects in virtual reality, but it's definitely very much, you're able to build, experiences with location-based, Google Street View 360 images. So that's been kind of cool.
Well, thank you so much, Kiki and Robert. This has been great. And I've loved the chat and all the sharing of the resources. I think we have one more slide after this one talking about some upcoming events that we'll have in the CS for All Teachers community. We will be joining the CSK8 chat next week on Wednesday at 8 p.m. It's 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, around CS clubs, camps, and other extracurricular programs. And then there is a webinar on the 25th. I don't know if that's me. Quite possible.
Sorry, that was me.
It's okay. But there will be a webinar on the 25th around microbits. I'm putting the link back into the chat box here. That is for tonight's webinar, and that is where we will have posted the recording as well as this presentation. My colleague who usually works on that, she's out today and tomorrow. So first of the next week, we should have the recording and the PowerPoint up if you want to go back and take a look and access these resources. So we just thank you all for being here and hope you'll join us again soon. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.